Let's begin. It's 6.5 minutes of slides. So you'll see 100 slides, but it's relaxed. Okay, so some of those pictures I guess will need some explanation, such as the one with Joanne in it. And it was Joanne stayed here for these 3 years while I was away, and I did come back for 2 years. I was for 27 months. Then Peace Corps sends us back if you extend, and I extended for 13 months. The 13 months extension, which includes that 1 month required back here. And so Jo hadn't seen me in that time, but she kept the house going and shoveled all the snow, as you saw in those pictures, and carted the wood to keep herself warm and kept the house going. We live off-grid in Bridport, so that's a lot of work. Let's see. I can keep going with this, I think. No, I guess not. So that, let's go down to the picture that I want to show you anyway. If there was any question as to where I was, I want that clear, so here we are. Right where the red circle is a small, it's a town, a pueblo, called Jarabacoa. And I was near there in Piedra Blanca, which is up in the hills above it, looking down over it. And many of the photographs, were taken right around in my area, of course, most of them except Andy's. As you can see, I had asked, we were given they told us, where would you like to go in the country? Would you like to go? And I said, I didn't have a special place, but I would like to be somewhere with a reasonable access of the ocean, because I love the ocean and I wanted to do that. And so they put me as far away from the ocean as they could, I think. And this happened to so many of us. We think that it was a part of, they want to find out where you want to go and not give that to you. So you have no way out, I kind of think that this is a thought here about that. And so the next time, if there's a next time, I'm going to find a place I least want to go to, and I'll tell them that one. It wound up being very interesting. So next, I would talk about a few things that I discovered Peace Corps. But my projects, I was sent as a teacher for appropriate technology. I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer. I live off grid, so appropriate technology is I don't know. It's a word that's nearly out of 1984, but what does it really mean? I don't know. But I was to teach at a school that's a part of the Ministry of the Environment, a 2-year school equivalent to a junior college here. So they said, and we had 48 students, and this it was interesting, as you will see. You saw some pictures of some bridges. There are walkways across a river, the Himanoa River, near the school, right at the base of the. It goes past the school's second campus, which is, this used to be the forestry school, and they grow trees, mostly pine trees, and that's where they grow them there at that second campus. And the students used to be foresters, but now they're trying to bring them into be environmental, to work in the ministry differently than just going into forestry. So that's why the students were to learn English, they were to learn a number of other things. So the bridge repair issue I will get into when we get into that part. I did a scuba certification. It's actually a redo. I'd been a scuba diver in the 70s, and I decided that by 1980, I was kind of through with diving as a tourist. But the idea of possibly working with scuba equipment, that to me would be very, very interesting. And I wanted to get back. Part of the reason I went was to learn about what my career really ought to be when I grow up. And being closer to the ocean, having more to do with the ocean, seems to suit me very well. I miss the ocean greatly. So this was perhaps an opportunity to work on something called the Underwater Museums. And as it turned out, this was with Indiana University, had this project, and it just, at the moment I got my certification, it closed, it seemed. So there I was, I didn't get a chance to use this. 2 years later, after my certification, there was an opportunity, and we had, at Punta Rusia, And you saw a picture with the lady, which was Joanne. She came down to visit me finally. Right after my COS, my close of service, Joanne came down. And I took her out to Punta Rusia, which is one of the most lovely places I found, because more than scuba diving, I like snorkeling. And there are reefs there. You can go out and you can see the fishes, and it's just a fabulous place to go. And these two volunteers, a husband and wife team, were transplanting. They were growing a reef, and they needed people, bodies, to use scuba gear to help anchor bits of coral to the old coral beds, and as a part of a science project. So I signed up for this and went, and I got to spend one day diving on this project, which I adored. I mean, it was lots of fun. It was kind of crazy, but it was as they always are, and a lot of fun. So this is something that all of you, I expect, are interested in becoming Peace Corps volunteers, and I really applaud this in you. And I want to just let you know a few things about being a Peace Corps volunteer. The most important one is that being a Peace Corps in Peace Corps is being out of your comfort zone. And while these may be just words in a nice armchair, I found it to be very difficult, and yet a huge growth opportunity. Not comfortable, but very rich. And as a tool which you will bring with you is this equation that I have learned, which works both in the United States and abroad. And it is that frustration, which we all feel, is linked intimately to expectation. If you can't do much about the frustration, but if you get rid of your expectations, the frustration doesn't appear. And what I've learned is that was critical. And what I learned, because you wind up very unhappy, things just do not go the way you would like them to go as planned. I discovered that you can forget about expectation, you can participate, you can run things, you just have no expectations as to the outcome or how anything's going to go, and so it winds up being a ride with everybody, and people do things, people learn things, it goes along, and everyone has a great time. And it's just a wonderful tool, little psychological tool. Here's another one that I learned, and this was a personal one. I have stolen the lyrics, kind of, from a popular song. Standing on a corner in Jarabacoa, such a fine sight to see. It's a Ferrari, my lord, with a boombox on board shouting, take a look at me. Hey baby, don't say maybe. I need to hear what you're saying to me. And what this means to me is what I did often was to simply stand in one place and ask, what is really happening in front of me? What's really going on? Not what I would like to see or what I think should be there, but what's actually happening? What are people choosing in their lives? What they're choosing in their lives are Ferraris and SUVs. It is just the way it is in the world. People want bigger cars. They're going to buy them. They're going to have them, and we have to deal with that. And it's just an interesting thing to look around and see, how is all this unfolding? And then perhaps asking why. And some of these things can be influenced, but it was very powerful just to see what was, and it was wonderful. I would like to offer you some questions to take into the presentation with you to think about, and then maybe from those questions you will be able to put together some questions of your own with them. They're just suggestions. There is an interesting thing I discovered with similarities between the Dominican Republic and the United States, and I had to do a lot of thinking about that. There we were, not of the culture that we were in the middle. Wow, how do I make this into an English sentence? And of which we found ourselves in the center, and that's it's a little lonely place to be, but it's a very useful place to be able to look at, see what's going on, and once again ask, well, what's really going on here? Look around to see how the social structure works. And the question always was, in my mind, as I saw, in my area is a touristic area for Dominicans, not for foreigners, but for Dominicans. Foreigners stay on the coast, pretty much. But for Dominicans, and so we had people, that was the Dominican folks who owned that Ferrari. And I've seen 3 of them. And I never knew that Porsche made an SUV. I saw my first Maserati roll through my little community. And so lots of things like this. I went to a little house. People invited me into this little tin shack and everything else. I'm sitting down and there's a bigger flat screen TV than I've got and a nicer car out front than I will ever own. And I'm thinking, how does this happen? And how does Peace Corps send me here to this place where these folks, they're not doing so badly. This is okay. At the same time, we have Haitian folks who are doing the jobs that the Dominicans don't want to do, and doesn't that sound familiar? And so I had friends with those people too, and worked with them as well. This image, I have a sticker. This is a sticker. Beach Corps. The beach is calling, how far will you go? I want to show this to you. It was a joke, but not a joke, at our post. And it was because in the past, Peace Corps volunteers had spent an awful lot of time at the beach. And being a volunteer is really hard. And nailing yourself down in this unfamiliar situation where you can't speak the language very well, and especially the dialects in which I was immersed. You want to run. You just want to go away and do something else. And many people just want to go home again. And so they did, kind of. They went to the beach. And I had met people come to the Dominican Republic from all over the world. And people don't leave here for the Dominican Republic much. But when you're in the DR, everybody's coming in. And many of these folks travel around Latin America, travel elsewhere widely. And they met a lot of Peace Corps volunteers, and the impression they had was not very good. They said, yeah, the Peace Corps volunteers they'd met were just goofing off. They weren't doing anything, really. And that was kind of sad. And so this sticker reminds me of that very well. It is like a doorway for me to an interesting discussion on the difficulties of this kind of service, shall we say. I don't like the word very much, but experience is a better word, I think. And how to get your head around sticking at it and trying and making it fun and not reaching for the exits. And we're reminded that it's tough. It's difficult. Here's another one. La vida es bonita. Apóyame para poder vivirla. Life is beautiful. Beautiful. Support me so that I can live. And this is an idea that this is the culminating photograph of a slideshow of 50 slides that Peace Corps loaded onto my computer somehow. I don't know how I got it, but I found it when I was putting this slideshow together, and I thought, wow, that says so much to me for what I want to discuss with you folks. What is development all about? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we figure this out? It was my preoccupation for the last 3 years, and I have enjoyed this preoccupation. I want to say also that I have loved Peace Corps, and I love the idea of Peace Corps. Here's my list of questions that Peace Corps told us, and they did tell us this. They said, you are now development professionals. And I thought, oh my God, help us. Because we were not development professionals. We were, most of us, 23 years old, right out of college, looking for our next drink, and trying to escape once again, wondering what we were doing here. So what is development? What are we doing? Why are we there in the DR, really? And what do I want to change in the DR? You arrive, and I'm going to be, changing people's lives here, really? Why? What do I want to leave the same, and why? Peace Corps service, is Peace Corps service a religious motivation? It's called a service. I was in the town that is most popular in the Dominican Republic for missionaries, and so I saw myself with lots and lots of missionaries. And there's a comparison there, and folks, I was denied several extension partners because I was not religious. I didn't have God in my life. And so, nope, sorry, we can't work with you. And so this interesting thing you run into, and you do something like this. When I was asked about this, I would say to people that mi error es la naturaleza. My prayer is out here in the natural world, and I go to church every day. That's what I told folks. So the thin patina of welcome and acceptance. This is something I call it thin. I've discovered it is. Challenge people's belief or suggest people change their behaviors and see how well and for how long this popular development sales presentation holds up. And it gets thin quick. It doesn't hold up very well. You wind up unpopular pretty quickly if you really start digging in. And so that's, once again, it's just interesting stuff. So what's really going on? Communities are not starry-eyed and stupid. They have long ago dialed us, missionaries, NGOs, Peace Corps, USAID, GIZ, which is the German equivalent, remittances, which is the money that's coming from the 2 million Dominicans living in New York City mostly, but Boston and around, back into their income stream. I was simply expected to be and providing a part of their income stream. and this has been going on this way for a very long time. That income stream supports their chosen, happens to be laid back, and I have nothing against that. I think they're healthier than we are this way of life, and the bottom line is the bottom line. As far as a volunteer goes, these guys, they're happy to see you, but they're also happy, very happy to have that grant that you were going to apply for various projects. I told them right away that I was not planning to apply for any grants. I wasn't planning to bring any money in particularly. I was there to teach them and empower them. Empowerment is a whole nother deal than giving people stuff. And that also was very interesting. So what is empowerment? How does it fit into development? Give a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach him to fish. Of course, this is the old saw. We were actually kind of taught this or led to work this out for ourselves during training. And with that, this ask me about our stoves projects when we get going in this. So, and what does giving things to people do? And I think you could probably answer that one pretty easily. So now I would like to just cover my projects, what they were, and then open this up for a discussion. Let's see, that's not the first one. That wound up. Here we go. I was sent to be a teacher at this school. And I served as a teacher, as a professor of appropriate technology at the school for a year, and then I backed out of it. It was just crazy. As I had mentioned, we had 14 students, and those are their ages. And we were told that these students were the best of the best in the country. That's what we were told. We discovered that that was sadly not at all the case, and none of us, all the professors, nobody knew, and it took us a while to catch on, really. The escuela, the school itself, was a part of the Ministry of the Environment Ministry. And let's see, students, they were to learn fluent English in 2 years. Did not happen. And also subjects such as in the environment, appropriate technology, Spanish, chemistry, math, global instrumentation, sociology, and many, many others. They were really overworked, these guys. And so I started something called the Club Appropriate Technology. And this, I was to develop the curriculum, the appropriate technology curriculum at the school, and teach it to a teacher who would be my project partner for the duration of my 2-year stay there. And the very first thing that happened to me at the school, well, I'll go through this. With my first project partner, I put together this, and it is a, I can't remember what they call this. I call it a blast. All these bubbles are things that have to do with appropriate technology, everything that related to it. And as it turned out, the directora of the school was interested in these things, the things that I could use my students as labor to produce for the school to make her look good. That was this whole thing that was going on, and I tried to work my way around that, and we were at loggerheads about this, of course, as you might imagine. These are the things that she chose that she'd like to have at the school, and they are water filters, screens on the buildings, eco-baños are composting toilets, and solar panels. So the things that she was interested in exploring.
Well, do you think you can enlarge, you can get that to project?
We're going to do bigger?
Yeah.
Let me bring it down.
F5.
You can try that. Oh, well, let me just put it into the slideshow, because I just gotten used to doing it. It'll start from the beginning, but I'll bump on down through this quickly. If it will. There we go. Okay, we'll get down to where we were. This is much better. There we are. So I had 3 project partners. Hector was, in 3 weeks, he was reassigned. And there goes the continuity. David Rodriguez I worked with for about 7-8 months, and he was reassigned. The directora is a crazy maker, and she drives everybody nuts. Everybody's miserable, and yet it's a school of the most wonderful people. I just loved all the professors. The directora, I called her Diabla Marta, and she insisted on being called Doña Marta, and I called her Diabla Marta, and the entire office broke up. She wasn't there. And Junior was at the time of this, some of these slides are from a presentation I gave to Peace Corps, which is of course a part of the work we have to do, make our reports. And at that time, Junior was my project. So, okay, the most important tool that what I did was I went back, I retreated into my own education and my own experience, my career, and I asked myself what the most important tool I had learned through my career. And that is the impulse, the habit, the ability, the pleasure to distance oneself from a problem and see it from a grander perspective. This is perhaps the definition of critical thinking. And I thought that, well, I wasn't going to be able to teach them math. We learned that. We learned a number of things that they weren't going to be able to learn that I thought I was led to expect them to be able to learn from me. And I thought, well, they're going to go into the mystery of the environment. We've got environmental issues. We have questions about climate change. We've got so many things on the plate, especially population. And I should mention this. The UN tells us that the 40% of the population are under 18 in the Dominican Republic. In my community, we had to do diagnostics of communities. I did two, the school and a small community. And I discovered that 57% of the population was under 25. It was 25 and under. And the 70% of those were between 11 and 24, with nothing else to do, not going to school or anything, nothing else to do in a sexually aggressive culture to explore the wonders of sex. And so the population is just going kaboom in the country. And if we haven't got pressure on the environment now, we're going to have pressure on the environment very shortly. This is where things are going. So I thought, okay, I need to teach these people how to see what's really going on. And they may not be able to do the math, may be able to do anything else, but they can step back and get down to the truth of things and not be swayed with this. And it's a skill that I have used throughout I'm an engineer, a designer, and my stuff has got to work. So I've got to be able to back up, I've got to see the whole picture, and it's got to work outdoors. I designed instruments for use on mountaintops. Real-world application of math and technologies. This is it's a crossing of a irrigation tube, you can see there, PVC pipe. And so I use this as a start. Now, yeah, without my little thing, how do I go back?
Use the back arrow.
Back arrow. Nope, didn't want to do that. That was the back arrow. So, oh boy. So let me see now. You got a glimpse of that thing anyway, and you've seen it in the overall run of pictures. This is this is a tourist attraction. It's one of the major ones in the Dominican Republic in the interior, and there's a problem with this. And I predicted it by going through that I knew that we couldn't get certain things in the Dominican Republic. That tube crossing that you saw was something that our volunteers, not me, but other engineers, there were 16 of us, another group, the water group, with 8 people, built during training, during something called community-based training, CBT. And so I knew where it was. It was up in my training center, which was pretty close to where I was posted here. And I went up with my project partner, with Hector, and photographed it and looked at these things. And sure enough, I was beginning to see problems with that. And I came down here, and from the simple analysis, it's a straight line analysis, I predicted where problems would be, if they were going to be, with this bridge. And I went, and it's down in what you're looking at, your left-hand corner, where the guys come down and disappear into the ground. And so now take a look at this. Oh my goodness, come on now, guy. Okay, so there's the problem. There's the area with the problem. There are 2 parts to this. One is you can see that these cables they don't have anything to keep them from wrapping around a very tight radius, which is the rebar there that makes an anchor, and they're breaking. And you can see in each of the 2 places, top left and lower right, that there are broken strands there in the cables. And when I pointed this out, I dug them out of the sand. And when I pointed this out to people, all heck broke loose. And they brought the Ministry of the Environment engineers up, and I had proposed a solution for this. And they didn't know what else to do, and they accepted my solution, and we fixed it. This was so, I figure here, another thing here with the 3 arrows, that is debris from running water, and the running water, as you can see, stacks debris all the way up to the top of that wire, which means the water gets that high. And that means that this river periodically, as we've seen elsewhere on rivers elsewhere in the country, when it rains, you get a hurricane comes through or something, it just puts huge stresses on these structures, and it's going to break this thing. And so, I pointed all of this out, and nobody had thought about this. So there we go. And so it was an opportunity to teach, and there are some of my students from one of my wonderful groups who came down, and I buried these things all, and I gave them the lecture, and then I led them down here and to see if they could find the problems from this, go through the same process I had gone through. And they kind of could, but I had to lead them by the nose. I started a teaching method called Method of Puzzles, Método de Rompecabezas. And this is an example of one of these things, a method of puzzles. Once again, it's about critical thinking. So in this one, and I won't answer this for you, but it's a fun one, in what size cube could you fit all 7 billion people on the Earth? And I gave them this data. The average human being weighs 100 kilograms, and the people are mostly water, and we know that's true. 100 kilograms is very generous, and 1,000 kilograms of water is a cubic meter. And so from that, you really can figure out what that is. And so I gave them that problem, and others like it. I started this project, I taught them this. Cocinar con captación de calor simply means cooking with captured heat. And this is the way I cook. We have cooked here for 30 years off-grid, and I have been cooking this way longer, my bicycle trips and things. And this is rice, white rice there. You heat it up for 5 minutes and wrap it up in a sleeping bag, and it cooks all by itself. You can turn the fire off. And I'll teach you guys how to do this. I hope you will go home and then be cooking soups, teas, rice, potatoes, stews, all kinds of things. With this method from now on, you just save huge amount of cooking gas. In the DR, that's important. Here, where we use gas for so much and we're wealthy relatively, it's just more nuisance than it's worth. But it does work. There are things that I realized about my students, and I won't go over all of these, but they didn't know how to use any tools. They didn't know how to use, didn't know how to measure anything, and they didn't know the metric system or the English system, and both are used simultaneously in the Dominican Republic, usually mixed. A width in yards and a length in meters. And it goes on like this. And they did not have any confidence that their ideas were worth anything. And so I put them in jail, like that. That's actually a bus back there. But these guys and this is something. And so we went looking at things. I taught them about tools. They had a shop with horribly dangerous tools, especially a table saw that was just insane. And I taught them about this, taught them how to use those things. We went through the metric system and English systems and measurements. I bought a dial caliper. I thought they would be interested in measuring very, very small things like the width of a human hair. And it turns out another rule is when you go into the Peace Corps, don't spend any of your own money on your project. Don't go out and buy things like I did, because it was a complete waste of money. They had no interest in it. They had no interest in doing that. We'll have to sit back and just wait a while and resist those impulses and figure out what they really do need and what will really work for you. So, and here's another problem. I took them outside and we worked on problems like this. It's just how high is a tree? How can you figure that out? And we've got, you're on the ground and you have a level and a tape measure and a square of some sort, a little triangle from your drawing table. And I had those things. And how tall is a tree? We had some pretty tall trees around. We did put screens on the comedor and the cocina, on the kitchen and the cafeteria, which made Doña Marta very happy. All in time for their 40th anniversary of the school. Next project that I did was something I did with another volunteer, and it's a water-to-water pump. And this is an image of it taken from does any of you out there know how to work with Google SketchUp? You know what it is? No, wonderful. So you will be interested in this, I think. Let's see if we can do this. I think I put it in the right place. The water-to-water pump takes a stream of water and from a source, and we had a source. What SketchUp did was enable me to to make this thing, which is in 3 dimensions. And you can see the whole thing here. And I won't be able to really go inside it, I don't think. But you get the idea. You can go right inside these things and see stuff. So it's really... So I did a lot of designing in SketchUp. I taught myself this, and I did a lot of designing. And you'll see a bunch of things from that. So the water-to-water, they had a stream, and they were using a ram pump. And a ram pump is about 7% efficient. And so we couldn't get, or the other engineer, Josh, couldn't get water up to the highest houses. He was missing 40 houses in his community. And so I knew about piston pumps. And I knew we had enough water to drive a water wheel like that. And I knew where to get them. And we found a piston pump made in Japan in the capital. Josh did, actually. And we found a guy who could actually build this whole thing for us. And the pump with the water wheel, this Pelton wheel, is 75% efficient. And it could get water up to the top of with pressure to spare. And it was nixed by Peace Corps staff because they wanted ram pumps. And the ram pumps were just crazy. They're expensive, and they, just as it says, they do things through an acoustic approach to pumping water. Very, very inefficient, and they break themselves apart in a short period of time, and they're real expensive. So couldn't do anything, but I could report on it to everybody anyway. We put that idea together, and it just wasn't accepted. I did two medical missions while I was in the Dominican Republic, and you'll get a chance to do that, perhaps, if, at least in the DR, we can do this. I don't know about other posts. And one of them, I was translating for people between the people and doctors who were trying to help them, and basically it was giving them medications. So this is about pharmaceuticals, distributing pharmaceuticals. And the second medical mission, of which this team was in, as Hospital Padre Beggini in the capital, and this was a surgical mission, people doing cosmetic surgeries, cleft palates, removing extra digits, fixing burns. There is a horrible thing that happens between girls in the Dominican Republic where some girl will encroach on go out with another girl's boyfriend, and so this other girl throws acid in the face of this first girl. Horrible injuries that come in to missions like this. These guys are out of Kansas City, and they're like, you know, people with distorted limbs, such as this one. They're going to operate on this and try to make this hand more useful for this young person, this child. And they are just, you know, most of them, all ages we get, but there's so many children, and it's really something to have been a part of that. And I was essentially off the street and in the operating room, scrubbed up and in helping people in the operating room and observing these operations. When the first thing that did was make the backs of my knees go weak. And then you buck up for this, and then you just do what you're told. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful week, really something to do. All right, next. And this one I'll remember. Okay, now I'll teach you how to do the cooking technique. This will be pretty easy. So I backed out of the school after a year. I was very, very unhappy. I wasn't learning Spanish. Everybody wanted to talk to me in English. So I wound up with a psychiatrist in the capital, and I decided to leave my project. And I thought at that time that I was sufficiently unhappy that if Peace Corps was going to toss me out, then I was going to go. But that's not at all what happened. I told my APCD, my boss, what I was going to do, and he said, "Wow, that sounds neat. And so you want to stay in your community?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do what I want to do from within the community where I've been assigned." And he said, "Great, go for it." And I had another APCD after that. There was not only did my project partners shift, I had 3 bosses as well during the time I was there. So things in Peace Corps aren't as advertised, and that's something I want to, but within that, you lose a framework but gain opportunities, and it is also great. So this cooking with captured heat, what does it do? It saves fuel, it gets smoke out of the kitchen because you're burning. I teach people to burn a hot fire, always with a hot fire. You build a fire just enough to get that water boiling and long enough to heat the food all through, and then it goes out, collapses, and you wrap everything up, and then you can rekindle it easily. So small hot fires, it improves nutrition. You're not cooking foods as hot as you are when you're boiling them. Then I designed boxes because I was just using a blanket, and you'll see that. I designed boxes, both expensive ones and then finally cheap ones when I discovered how expensive the expensive ones were going to be, the pretty ones, which you've seen a picture, you'll see it again. I designed a new cook stove. Peace Corps in 77 countries has got stoves projects going everywhere, and these stoves are expensive. Volunteers, volunteers get grants to put 40, 60 stoves in their communities, and the Peace Corps volunteer leaves. The stoves don't last very long, and the people who had the stoves then are back cooking on their Tres Piedras Vagones. They're traditional stoves with the big chunks of fire, and they haven't learned anything, and they have this thing, and their kitchen spaces are small anyway, and this big chunky stove is taking up room, and it's not being used. So what I did was I designed a cook stove that used all the advantages, improvements of the improved stoves, and put them in a little frame. I studied them. Threw away 2 of them, put them in a frame, and put them back on their traditional fire source, and taught people how to build fires and run this whole thing without making smoke in the kitchen. And the advantages are the stoves are cheap; they're almost free. If they break, you just got to go out and get a new rock. And they already know how to run this. They're very good with fires. It's awareness is the only thing that's needed. It was really, really easy, and I folded into this a Trojan horse. I call this a Trojan horse project because the folks that I was working with believed in 2 sources of information, their parents and the Bible, and I offered them a third, which was science, sneakily, with a science project that they could redo all the time. So, so I've mentioned these things. It keeps the smoke out. It allows people to use their stoves. This is the technique. You boil the water, and then you turn it down to simmer, and you add the food. You add the food, turn it down to simmer it for a short time. This is whole grain rice, brown rice for here, so this is the times. 10 minutes, cooks the rice, heats the rice through, and then you put it in an insulated box, wait for an hour, and your rice is done. That's it. You guys can do it. That's all there is to it, and I thought this is so easy that people are just going to be using this thing, and what I realized was that I thought that this project was, in fact, I thought that this project would bring me to the problems with development very quickly, and I was correct about that. I wound up facing what's hard about development, boom, immediately. And it was a great place to be because I could just stand there and look at the real problem and try to see what might work or what I could learn about it. As Paul Bowles wrote, he was pessimistic about this. He said, "You're not going to figure it out." He said, "This is so complicated. Trying to understand a foreign culture and get it to change, you're not going to figure out how to do this, how to improve people's lives that way. It's a very difficult problem, but also a wonderful problem." And so there I was with this. This was a part of my talk. The heat being added, which is dollar signs, of course, especially if it's gas that you're burning. The water boils, and then all the steam that you see there is simply wasted energy. That's dollars going away. So we avoid that. There was my setup, and I would wrap it up, and then the rice is done in the half an hour or so. And you avoid this. It does not burn the rice, ever. So it saves grain as well. And we could talk about, there's another problem here specific to the Dominican culture, but we can get to this later. Grains, and I'd mentioned them, ginger tea, beans, lentil soup, stews, vegetables, all these kinds of things we can do. I took it upon myself to add in here nutrition, of course, and that wasn't very well received either. And we begin with the caja de colores, these cooking boxes. There are 2 of them here. One is from a SketchUp drawing, and we built one of those. And so a business development essential that I realize you're talking trying to get people to use a different technique for cooking, it's all about convenience. And if you think about it, you don't have to, for many of these things, you only need to look into yourself to see what needs to be done, where you might go next, what that illuminates in how you're trying to approach other people and get them to change. What are your motivations? What kind of things concern you? In this particular instance, the role of convenience. Well, we buy new things because they are more convenient. Price is an issue, but isn't the only issue. Convenience is huge. And so I started making my presentations from that perspective. It made a difference in how I presented my material to people. And it also changed the way I designed my product, the caja de color. And so the box was just to make things more convenient. People like Nani, you saw a picture of Nani standing in her kitchen, and behind her, you saw her big smile, but you saw behind her also a pile of clothes on top of an old, by the way, improved stove that they're not using because it actually is less efficient than the 3 Rocks traditional stove that they've got. They discovered that. I said, why aren't you using that? I know the volunteer who put that in their kitchen. It's how I met them, that family. And they said, it uses too much wood. So, not as advertised. And so I designed the box because it's the thing that Dominicans have, and maybe we all have, lots and lots of old clothes and waste material from things, cut up material. And we would take that and wrap things up in it. And it was great for cooking. It's free. It's great material. So if you have a box to put it in, and it's a pretty box, nobody sees that you're cooking in old clothes. And people in the Dominican Republic are very conscious of the way things appear. They're very appearance sensitive. And so that was, so here's the box that we built. I built with my project partner, Fuera, in my community, Marcos Rodriguez. And it took forever to get it built, but it was beautiful when we did it, and it turned out to be very, very expensive. And so I designed this. It's a caricola de listones of slats. And this, of course, is a SketchUp model, and this is what we built. We can give people all the pieces there for the box for 100. Actually, our cost is 100 pesos, and which is about $2.50, as opposed to 2,500 pesos for that pretty box that you saw in pine. And they will. Then it's a project. They assemble it, and we've already drilled all the holes. They just put and give them the nails. And so they get out their hammer and whatever, and they build this thing. And those ladies back there built this. They built these two, and they did a beautiful job with this thing. And it takes the pot. Now they're going to put old clothes in it. And at this house, what was interesting to me and why I came back to them, this was very late in my service. It's only the last 6 months or something that I figured this out. Make these things cheap, dude. And people then will be able to use them and buy them. The lady there, I had explained this as I explained it to you, the cooking technique. I explained it to her in Spanish, of course, and then I used to play pool there. They had a pool hall, and so 6 months later, one of her daughters says, and I don't know why I even came around to mentioning this. I think it was because I was looking for somebody who might be interested in building these things, and these folks are very community-minded. They do all kinds of constructive crafts, arts and crafts kind of project with the community to build things that they might be able to sell to tourists to come. And so I thought they would do this, and so Licenia said to me, the daughter said to me, "Oh, Mom cooks like our rice like that all the time." I had no idea, and I thought nobody was using them. That was another thing that happened. I give this in lots of communities. I go to Peace Corps volunteers communities and teach this project, and then to everyone's dismay, their dismay as well, no one would use this thing. And that's what I meant by coming up against this hard nut of development. You can offer them something that saves them money, gives them better food, and gets smoke out of the kitchen, which is a huge problem health-wise. 4 million deaths worldwide a year. And that's just the deaths. That's the statistic you can see. It's the top of a pyramid, the little tiny block on top of a pyramid of other health issues that come from inhalation, the regular inhalation of cooking smoke, wood fires, dung, and everything else. And nobody was using it, and yet secretly, this woman who was a prime mover in our community, my community, she understood it and she did it. And I was just elated. This was just great. So Lisandra is using this technique, and so she got her friends together, as you see them back there, and they built these, and now they have these, and I think this is going to expand. It's going to take some time to do that. New cook stove. I also designed a cook stove, and what I did was I looked at the stoves that are coming out in the world, and we had a great manual of these things. There were like 30 of them. And what they did was they used a pot skirt. They always use a lid on the pot, and they had air inlet underneath the fire, and they had a combustion chamber. And nobody could explain to me just why this magical combustion chamber improved the efficiency of those stoves, but apparently that's what it did. And so what I did was, in SketchUp again, as you can see, I designed a frame, a cheap frame made out of construction steel that would hold this combustion chamber and would take a variety of sizes of pots. The cook stoves, the improved cook stoves that Peace Corps is giving to people, and so many other organizations are as well, will take only one pot. So you can't use all of the pots. So this one will take many pots, different sizes, and the combustion chamber is simply a tube. It's just a 4-inch diameter tube, about 6 inches tall, and my milk, a dried milk powder container, was perfect. I just cut out the bottom, and I had a combustion chamber. So boom, we have this thing, and with something. And I used I crushed tin cans. I crush them, and they made the channels. Here it's shown simply with like pieces of steel or something. But so this was my improved stove that should work. And you can see here it has the pot skirt, which concentrates. It keeps the heat right around the pot. Has a lid on it, and I also on my stove, and you've seen this picture before, that is my pot skirt, and there's a lid on my pot on my stove at home, and I did 50 time to boil tests, and I make tea. I make ginger tea all the time, and so I fill it up, and every time I do ginger tea, I would time it, and I would do it with the lid, without the lid, with the skirt, without the lid, this kind of thing, and I discovered, here is this thing before welding. Looks prettier in the drawing, and we have to work on that. Here's what I discovered through my tests, and I published this. The pot lid is a 10% improvement. The pot skirt gives you an 8% improvement, and my recommendation is, given that the pot skirt is not convenient, to just get rid of it, throw it out the back door. And my cooking method improves the use of fuel is a 200 to 400% improvement. And those are the other things. And the combustion chamber is unknown. The tests are still going on in my community by a couple of families, and I don't know what the results are or if they're really following through at the moment. I'm not there to push on them, so I don't know. I have produced also a cooking project manual. It has recipes in it. This is what it's called: The Incomplete Kitchen Klutz and Peace Corps DR Guide to Staying Healthy, Cheap, Using Local Foods. And it's 40 pages. Has recipes, and you guys can have a copy if you give me your email addresses. And it'll show you all of this thing. So, lessons to be learned here. It's difficult to change people's behavior, and that comes out of Super Freakonomics, which I recommend. Great book to read. And nothing will get done until all the stakeholders are satisfied, and that's from Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. He's still alive. Well, so are these guys too. But okay, the end of that one. One more little thing. I had another project, and that was you saw some people in there that you think maybe shouldn't have been there. Obviously, a guy who looks like he's Cuban, and the others were from the States. So I met Josh LaPergola. He came into my community. He's studying carpinteros, woodpeckers. Their Kiscayan woodpecker is endemic. It is only on the island. And so he has a grant. He's from Cornell. He has grants to study and to work on his PhD candidate. So this is projects for him. And his project was failing. He couldn't capture the birds he needed to study. And so they started playing around with mist nets. You guys know what a mist net is? Very, very fine net for capturing birds. They can't see it, so they fly into it. And if it's in the right place, if it's in their flight path, then you've got them. And you can study them, you can band them, with what he was doing, banding them. And so on the left there, you see a palm tree. And these birds nest in cavities that they make in the palm trees. the palm trees got hollow, and they find this, and they hammer their way in and make nests, the cavities. And they're 60 feet up in the air, often. These were a little bit lower down for that one, because you can see the mist net at sort of the middle of the palm tree there. So I knew something about cheap towers, and I thought, from what I'd been to some of the ferreterias, the hardware stores in town in Jarabacoa, and I saw materials, I saw tubes used for electrical conduit. And there are some welding shops around, and I thought we could build these things, so I designed all the parts. And we went, and this was extraordinary. Josh and I went to Elias, who is at the shop, and these are the mist net towers here, and I did it later. I did it in SketchUp just so we had something. We went to Elias at his shop here in Jarabacoa. They got the materials from Santiago, and they built these things for us. Josh had the money that they asked for, and our project was complete, and we were erecting towers in 3 days. This is unheard of. But money greases the wheels. These things work. He's getting the grants. So here we are loading it up on Luis's truck, which, by the way, is newer than anything I have ever owned. Here is a drawing of the way this works. The two towers go up together, and the mist net gets hoisted up on pulleys, dip, 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 and the bird flies into it, and then you lower the mist net, and you catch your birds. And this is just a detail. There's so much information in that simple picture that you saw previously. There's a come along. There are stakes which are specified for length and type, and gin poles, the base setup, all this stuff, anchors. I had to design anchors that would hold and make these things safe in the soils there, which is mostly clay. It's an interesting clay and sand mix, and when it rains hard, it gets very, very soft, and I had to figure out how to make sure that these things would still stand up after a hard rain. So there was a lot actually that went into these towers. They look a little rickety, and they are a little rickety, but they're plenty for holding that mist net. And indeed, we captured birds. This is the Carpintero is a very pretty bird, fairly big. And he will peck at you. And this has saved Josh's project. And so he's come back for a second and then a third year. And we've become very good friends, of course. And he asked me if I would design him a way to get up towers that cannot be climbed. He eventually has to climb all of the trees that he can't climb, because he needs to get at the chicks that are in the nests to ban them and count them and see what kind of parasites are suffering from, and all the rest of this stuff that ornithologists do. And so he wanted a ladder that could get him up, and we were thinking of ways to do this. And so I designed for him a climbable tower. I never done one of these, but I figured we could make this thing work. And I did the numbers as an engineer, did the numbers on this thing, and it looked to me like it would be strong enough. And indeed, then we put together, at 60 feet tall, a foot on a side, it's triangular, cross-braced. We had Alias weld this thing up, cost $1,000. And it's turned out to be absolutely worth it. It is so rigid, you can stand, I think it's something like 12,000 pounds on top of it without any guying, and it won't buckle. So we are not going to have anybody, this thing, it was not going to collapse. And we're guying it every 10 feet. They're 10-foot sections. We're going up. Somebody holds it up. You go attach the ropes to it and go out to the anchors, and then hoist up another 10-foot section and just ding, 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 keep going all the way up to the top, and it's guyed 6 times all the way up, and a very, very rigid, very, very comfortable thing to climb. And you can angle it, you can get it around so that Josh can get at the cavities. And so these projects working with Josh has been just, it was great. It was great to actually do something that worked. And it was good. Another couple of things I did, there's a member of our community who wants a composting toilet for the Haitian community. They don't have any place to poop. They're pooping out in the fields, they're pooping along the river. This is not good. And so, our community, my community, we have the most wealthy, living the most exotic homes you'll ever see, all the way down to the poorest. So it was a great place to figure out where my project, the cooking project, might fit. And so I tried to talk to all of these different levels in the socioeconomic strata available to me there, which is like everybody. You know, the Maserati owner and the guy who doesn't have enough for, he has to walk everywhere and has got holes in his shoes. And so this is the composting toilet, more or less, that Peace Corps taught us. And I know about ferrous cement, so I did this, and I made some changes, put it up on a pedestal, gave it a door. There were lots of problems with the original one that I solved. And of course, this is for a community of people, of like 40 people, so I quadrupled the size of it. And it is in the works. Whether Samuel is going, he's the guy who's going to fund this. I said, you know, he asked me 2 Christmases ago to do this, and I did the design, and then he avoided me. And then he wants to know about it again. I guess he got reinterested. He has the money to do this. He's a wealthy person, and so he's going to fund this. So he says, and he's got the design all dimensioned, everything ready to go. And there we are. Those are the projects.